FIFA is about to make more money from a single event than almost any organization in the history of sport, $13 billion. And it will pay almost no tax on any of it, because on paper, it's a non-profit, the same legal category as a chess club on your street. This is the story of how that's completely legal and who actually pays for it. It's like 3-4 times more, the final 8 times more. That's Paul Marshall. Brazil 2014, Russia 2018, Qatar 2022. This passionate US national men's team superfan watched the last 3 World Cups in person, opener to final. In 2026, it finally came to his own backyard, and he got priced out of his own city. 4 state attorneys general have subpoenaed FIFA. 69 members of Congress want answers, and by the time the final whistle blows in New Jersey, the people who paid for this tournament will not be the ones who profit from it. Let's start with the scale, because the numbers here don't really work like normal numbers. The 2026 World Cup is being co-hosted by the United States, Mexico, and Canada. It is the first World Cup with 48 teams, up from 32. It is the first with 104 matches, up from 64. 16 host cities, 39 days of football. FIFA's entire 4-year commercial cycle, running from 2023 to 2026, is projected to bring in around $13 billion, a figure that has been revised upward twice from an original projection of $11 billion. About $2 billion of that increase actually comes from a different tournament entirely, FIFA's new Club World Cup, staged for the first time in 2025. But even stripping that out, the core World Cup business has grown 72% from the Qatar cycle that ended in 2022. Of the full $13 billion, FIFA expects roughly $9 billion to come directly from this single tournament. That is the single biggest payday in the organization's history, from one event. Here's where the money actually comes from. Broadcasting and television rights make up the largest share at around 30% of the cycle budget, followed by hospitality and ticketing at 24%, marketing and sponsorship at 21%, and licensing rounding out the rest. Notice what's missing from that list. None of it is prize money paid out before the tournament. None of it is infrastructure FIFA built. This is almost entirely money flowing in from broadcasters, sponsors, and fans, flowing toward one organization in Zurich. So how does that money actually get in the door? Not through ticket sales. Ticket sales are the smallest real lever FIFA has. The biggest one is broadcasting. And broadcasting doesn't work the way most fans think. In 2015, FIFA renewed its US and Canadian broadcast rights for this exact tournament, for Fox and for Telemundo, without opening it up to competing bids. One deal, no auction, locked in over a decade in advance. That's not how rights usually get sold. Networks usually fight for these, bid against each other, drive the price up. Here, FIFA picked its partner and kept it. Then in 2026, FIFA added something new, a digital layer on top of the broadcast deal. YouTube and TikTok were both named preferred platforms for this tournament. For the first time, broadcasters can legally stream the opening minutes of every match live, for free, before pushing viewers back to the paid broadcast. It sounds generous. It isn't really. It's a funnel. FIFA had a problem. For years, fans were already watching World Cup highlights on YouTube. Clipped, uploaded by someone else, monetized by someone else, generating zero revenue for FIFA or its broadcast partners. The preferred platform deal doesn't give that content away. It brings it back inside the system, where FIFA can track it, monetize it, and control it. Sponsorship works on the same principle, just with a harder edge. World Cup sponsors don't just pay for a logo, they pay for exclusivity, and FIFA enforces that exclusivity aggressively. Every host stadium becomes what FIFA calls a clean site. No competing brand's logo, no unauthorized ad, not even a rival product visible in the crowd, if FIFA's enforcement teams can help it. This is the part nobody puts a number on, because it isn't really about what sponsors pay FIFA. It's about what FIFA prevents everyone else from doing, for free, so the paying sponsors get what they paid for. Broadcast rights, locked in without competition. A digital platform relationship engineered to bring outside value back inside. and a sponsorship system that polices its own exclusivity like a border. None of this is illegal. All of it is designed carefully, deliberately, to make sure the money keeps flowing in one direction, and that's before a single ticket gets sold. So why 48 teams? FIFA's official answer is football development, giving more nations a chance to compete on the world stage. That's true, as far as it goes. But there's a much simpler mechanical reason underneath it. More teams means more matches. 64 matches in Qatar became 104 in 2026, a 47% increase in inventory. And inventory is the entire business model. Every additional match is another broadcast slot to sell to a network, another night of ticket sales in a stadium, another few hours of sponsor visibility. FIFA didn't expand the World Cup because 48 teams makes for better football. It expanded it because 104 matches is worth more than 64. And it isn't just tax revenue that host cities are giving up. In several cases, the actual cash to keep the games running has come down to a standoff between a town's taxpayers and one of the richest events on Earth. Take Foxborough, Massachusetts, a town of roughly 19,000 people, hosting 7 World Cup matches at Gillette Stadium. Local officials identified close to $7.8 million in public safety costs tied to hosting. However, the town refused to front a single dollar of it from its own budget, even on a promise of being reimbursed later. For months, that refusal held. Foxborough's select board denied the entertainment license FIFA needed to even play the games. While the town and the tournament's organisers argued in public over who would pay first, it became, briefly, an actual threat to the matches happening at all. Then, Robert Kraft picked up the phone. Within a day of a direct call between Kraft and the town's board chair, a deal was in place. The host committee, backed by Kraft's own company, agreed to pay every dollar of security costs up front. Foxborough's taxpayers ended up paying nothing. Stop and sit with that for a second. A town smaller than a single NFL stadium's capacity went up against a $13 billion operation and won, not through a lawsuit, through refusing to move. Toronto wasn't as lucky. Early cost estimates for hosting there started in the tens of millions of dollars. They are now projected at roughly $380 million. Some cities looked at these numbers and simply said no. Chicago, the third largest city in the United States, declined to host any World Cup matches at all. City officials said hosting would leave Chicago in debt. Instead, Chicago ran its own separate marketing campaign, inviting fans to visit the city anyway, hoping to capture some tourist spending without taking on any of the tournament's financial risk. This is the pattern researchers have found across the World Cup's entire history, not just this edition. 12 of the last 14 World Cups hosted since 1966 have resulted in financial losses for the host country. The last 3 tournaments before this, one posted an average return on investment of negative 31%. So Foxborough held the line and got out clean. Toronto didn't. The difference wasn't the size of the bill, it was who blinked first. Now here's where the story turns. Because all of this, the broadcast deals, the sponsorships, the inventory, sits on top of a legal structure that very few fans have ever actually looked at. FIFA is headquartered in Zurich, Switzerland, and under Swiss law, it is registered as an association under Article 60 of the Swiss Civil Code. That is the exact same legal category available to a local chess club or a neighborhood residence group. As a registered association, FIFA isn't required to register with the state in the way a corporation is. It isn't required to publish detailed public accounts the way a public company would. And critically, it benefits from favorable tax treatment on the revenue it earns from the World Cup. There was a moment when this was almost challenged. The canton of Zurich's local government rejected a motion from the Social Democratic Party that would have forced entities with annual turnover above 1 billion Swiss francs, including FIFA specifically, to pay standard corporate tax rates. The proposal failed. FIFA kept the exact same legal structure it has held since the organization was founded, and the numbers behind that structure tell their own story. FIFA's reserves and liquid cash have run as high as roughly $4 to $4.8 billion combined at their peak. However, by the end of 2025, the reserves had declined to around $2.7 billion as pre-tournament costs were paid out. Keep in mind, they are yet to book a bulk of this current 2026 World Cup revenue. Its president, Gianni Infantino, earns approximately $6 million in total annual compensation. A pay package set not by some outside regulator, but by a compensation panel that FIFA itself appoints. To be clear about what the non-profit label actually restricts, it doesn't cap how much FIFA can earn. It only restricts what FIFA can do with the money. It has to be spent on football-related purposes, and that definition in practice is wide enough to include executive salaries, operational costs, and development grants to FIFA's 211 member associations around the world. FIFA hasn't broken any laws here. This is the system working exactly as designed, a non-profit, sitting on billions in reserves, about to run the most lucrative single sporting event ever held. Stop for a second. Everything you just heard, the tax exemption, the Article 60 registration, the reserves, none of it happened by accident. Every rule you're about to hear in the next few minutes was written by the people it benefits. That's not a conspiracy. That's just how the paperwork got built. Keep that in mind as we go inside the room where the money actually gets decided. Now, somebody has to run that non-profit. His name is Gianni Infantino. He's FIFA's president, and his total compensation runs to roughly $6 million a year. For context, that's a corporate executive salary, attached to an organization with the same legal status as a residents group. Here's the part that actually matters though. It's not the number, it's who sets it. Infantino's pay isn't decided by shareholders because there are none. It isn't set by a government regulator because FIFA isn't a public company. It's set by a compensation committee, appointed by FIFA itself. Read that again. The organization paying the salary also appoints the people who decide what that salary should be. In most industries, that's called a conflict of interest, and it gets regulated. In Swiss non-profit law, for an association the size of FIFA, it's simply how the structure works. To be fair to FIFA, this isn't hidden, it's disclosed in their own financial reports. Nobody's pretending the panel is independent. But disclosure isn't the same as oversight. Knowing how the sausage is made doesn't mean anyone outside the room gets a say in the recipe. And this is the same pattern that shows up again and again in FIFA's structure. The tax exemption exists because Swiss law allows it. The compensation panel exists because FIFA appointed it. The non-profit status exists because FIFA registered under Article 60 and nobody successfully challenged it since. Nothing here required breaking a rule. Every piece of it required writing the rules in a way that only ever points in one direction. That's the pattern to watch for as we go further, because it's about to leave Zurich and start showing up in the deals FIFA makes with the actual countries hosting this tournament. That status in Zurich is just the foundation. The real money move is what happens next, because FIFA doesn't just protect its own tax position, it exports it every 4 years to whichever country wants to host. When a country wants to host a World Cup, granting FIFA and everyone connected to the event tax-exempt status isn't a negotiating point, it's a precondition of the bid. In Mexico, the government granted FIFA a full 100% income tax exemption back in 2018 as part of the package that secured World Cup hosting rights. In the United States, every single host city passed legislation exempting World Cup ticket sales from state and local sales taxes at FIFA's insistence. That sounds abstract until you put a number on it. The state of Florida will lose around $7.4 million in sales tax on the matches played in Miami. Georgia expects to lose up to $25 million in state and local sales taxes on the matches played in Atlanta. And Missouri's analysis runs to roughly $1.9 million per game. With 6 matches scheduled at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, that's over $11 million that state will not collect. Revenue that, on any other event at that exact same stadium, it would. These aren't oversights. FIFA required these exemptions as the price of being chosen to host. Foxborough won that fight, but most host cities aren't fighting over a one-time security bill. They're taking on debt that outlasts the tournament by decades. Not every World Cup stadium in 2026 is new. Most are existing NFL and MLS venues, repurposed. That's actually the whole selling point of this tournament. No new white elephant stadiums like Brazil built in 2014 or South Africa in 2010, most of which sit half-used today. But repurposing isn't free. Fields had to be converted to natural grass, dimensions adjusted, and meeting FIFA's own commercial standards, stadium by stadium. And host cities are paying for that adjustment with the same tool cities always reach for, municipal bonds. Atlanta committed around $120 million in infrastructure bonds just for street and lighting upgrades around Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Toronto's total hosting budget went from an initial 30 to 45 million Canadian dollars to roughly 380 million, a tenfold increase financed the same way. Here's where two experts looking at the exact same numbers land in completely different places. One municipal finance analyst called this a normal, healthy use of the bond market, cities investing in infrastructure they'll use long after the tournament ends. An economist studying these same host cities called it something else. Cities taking on real financial risk for a tournament that shares none of its revenue with them. Both are right, technically. The disagreement isn't about the numbers. It's about who's actually holding the risk if the projected benefits don't show up. And this isn't hypothetical. It's already happened. Look at Korea and Japan in 2002. Stadiums built for a single tournament, sitting nearly empty today, still costing local governments money every single year just to maintain. FIFA doesn't co-sign these bonds. FIFA isn't on the hook if a stadium becomes a financial dead weight 5 years from now. The host city is. So when FIFA says the 2026 tournament avoided the white elephant problem, that's true for FIFA. Whether it's true for Atlanta and Toronto won't be known for years. Remember Paul Marshall, priced out of his own city? Remember Foxborough refusing to move? Different fights, same shape. Somewhere between a fan's ticket and a town's security bill, there's a number that's supposed to explain all of it. FIFA says that number is grassroots reinvestment. Let's check. So where does all this money actually end up once it's inside FIFA? This is the question FIFA's entire non-profit defense rests on, and it deserves real numbers, not just the talking point. The program is called FIFA Forward. It's how FIFA distributes revenue to its 211 member associations, the actual governing bodies of football in every country on Earth. For this cycle, 2023 through 2026, the total forward investment is $2.25 billion. That sounds enormous until you divide it. Each member association is entitled to up to $8 million, total spread across 4 years. Roughly $2 million a year for the entire football program of an entire country. Compare that to what FIFA expects to earn from this single tournament, $9 billion. FIFA also created something new for this cycle specifically, a $660 million football development fund, drawn directly from the surplus this World Cup is expected to generate. To be clear about what this actually is, it's real money. It funds real infrastructure, training centers, pitches, referee programs, competitions, in countries that genuinely could not fund them otherwise. FIFA also points out, accurately, that every member association receiving these funds undergoes an annual independent audit. But here's the tension nobody quite resolves. The same associations receiving this funding are also the ones who vote in FIFA's elections. That's completely legal. It's also worth sitting with for a second. The money doesn't just fund grassroots football, it also, quietly, funds loyalty. So is FIFA reinvesting in the game the way it claims? Yes, genuinely, in dollar terms, that's true. Is that reinvestment anywhere close to proportional to what the tournament actually generates? That's a much harder yes, and whether that gap is a scandal or just how a global institution runs on this scale, that's exactly the argument FIFA itself is about to make. FIFA's own defense of all this is consistent, and it isn't entirely without merit. President Infantino has repeatedly pointed to FIFA's non-profit status, arguing that the revenue generated by the World Cup gets reinvested across the organization's 211 member football associations worldwide. funding the global game, not enriching any individual owner. And it's true, FIFA has no shareholders extracting profit. There's no one quietly pocketing dividends from this multi-billion-dollar cycle. Money genuinely does flow back out to football development programs in member countries. But sitting on billions in reserves is a strange position for an organization whose entire legal justification is that it isn't trying to accumulate wealth. And a $6 million executive salary, set by a panel the organization appoints itself, sits uneasily next to a tax filing built for a residents' association. The honest answer is that FIFA exists in a genuine grey zone, legally a non-profit, but operating at a financial scale most for-profit corporations would envy. So what, if anything, could actually change? 69 members of the United States Congress have already put a specific set of demands in writing. They are asking FIFA to redistribute the large blocks of unsold tickets currently held back into more affordable price tiers, rather than letting them sit and drive up artificial scarcity. And they're asking FIFA to provide direct financial relief to host cities, as several of them have started charging admission fees for fan festivals that were originally supposed to be free simply to cover costs FIFA never funded. In Europe, Football Supporters Europe and the consumer group Euroconsumers have filed a formal complaint with the European Commission. Their argument is that FIFA holds a monopoly over ticket sales and has used that position to impose conditions that would never be acceptable in a competitive market. That complaint is still active, and the critique is no longer just coming from fans and politicians. Miguel Maduro, the former chairman of FIFA's own governance committee, brought in after the corruption scandals of 2015 to reform the organization from the inside, has been publicly scathing. His proposed solution is structural, an independent oversight body, outside FIFA's control, with the power to audit and challenge commercial decisions before they become policy. Besides, there are smaller interventions already happening on the ground. New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani negotiated a block of 1,000 tickets at $50 each for New York residents, covering several group stage matches and 2 knockout rounds, though notably not the final itself. It's a symbolic gesture, given that the final alone will have nearly 80,000 seats, but it's a signal of where political pressure is heading. None of these reforms are guaranteed. FIFA has survived corruption scandals, criminal indictments, and decades of criticism about its governance. What's different this time is that the pressure is arriving from multiple directions at once. Lawmakers, regulators, consumer groups, and former FIFA insiders. All during a tournament that FIFA itself has described as its greatest commercial success. Whether that combination is enough to produce structural change, or whether it fades the moment the final whistle blows, is perhaps the most interesting question the 2026 World Cup leaves behind. Here's the actual shape of the 2026 World Cup when you strip away the football. A 48-team format that mostly exists because more matches means more inventory to sell. A $13 billion commercial cycle flowing into an organization that pays no corporate tax on most of it. Host cities that lose tax revenue, absorb security costs, and, based on the last 60 years of history, will probably finish the tournament in the red. Fans paying record prices for tickets under a pricing model that 4 state attorneys general, 69 members of Congress, and the European Commission are now all scrutinizing simultaneously. FIFA calls itself a non-profit, and legally it is one. But somewhere between Zurich and the final whistle in New Jersey, the money tells a very different story than the paperwork does. And here's the thing about that story. It isn't new. FIFA didn't invent this playbook. It borrowed pieces of it from somewhere far closer to home. 3 of the biggest club badges in the world, Real Madrid, Barcelona, and Manchester City, used a version of this same trick decades before FIFA ever touched a World Cup budget. Different paperwork, different country, same basic move. Keep the revenue, let someone else absorb the cost, and call the whole thing legitimate. One of those clubs is still being investigated for it right now, and there's still no verdict. If you want to see exactly how 3 of the most dominant clubs on earth built their empires on that same loophole, and why nobody's been able to close it. That's next. If this video helped you see the World Cup differently, a like and a subscribe genuinely helps a channel like this keep finding these stories. See you in the next one.